So I wanted to do this video of the 1997 launch of NKF cyberNephrology at the International Congress in Sydney, Australia. Not only because I've suddenly realized that it is technically possible to do such a video recreation, but also because with the video legacy resources that this presentation talks about, now probably 200 or more people that we have video footage on, would be possible using AI resources like Sora and Runway and others to actually get them to give presentations. And we could do that with John Jacob Abel or Homer Smith or any other prominent people from kidney medicine. Yeah, it's really quite exciting to think about doing that. It would add a lot to the video legacy process. And yeah, so I kind of felt that we will be entering a new chapter where we can provide new content using the video, image, and voice of existing people from the distant past. Yeah. So so that's going to be exciting. So yeah, what I'm going to do first is start the audio and then show you the same slide set that I was presenting back in 1997. It's kind of encouraging that I sound quite similar in the audio file to what I sound like now. But anyway, we can see what you think about all that. So here comes the presentation audio.
So if I could start then with the first slide.
Yeah, so just a second here.
The internet is part of a general phenomenon of electronic communication. And certainly the up-to-date program you'll hear about later is an important facet of this in renal medicine. But part of what is happening is the replacement of traditional journals and books by the CD-ROM technology. There are many reasons for that. The storage space for journals is really quite considerable. Library budgets are going down. The number of journals is going up. There are all sorts of pressures toward putting journal content on CD-ROM, figuring out how to charge for it, how to make this a practical way to distribute data. There are two main CD-ROM-based resources that you should be familiar with. One is the up-to-date program you'll hear about later. The other has to do with the pharmacologic agent interactions and planning dosing of drugs, and this is Multum software. Thus far, I've been talking about things that cost money. I'm now going to talk about something that's absolutely free, and that is the CD-ROM from the ISN Video Legacy Project. And I would encourage you to find out a lot about this project, which is being launched at this meeting. In your Congress bag, there is a yellow sheet of paper that describes the session that is on Thursday from 4:30 to 6. It's at the very end of the meeting, and it will be a very interesting session at which one of the senior individuals that we interviewed for this project, Priscilla Kincaid-Smith, will react to her interview, field questions about it, and it will really be quite an interesting event. We also have a cyberspace booth, as most of you know. It's very easy to see. It has a huge banner saying cyber nephrology. It is directly above you in a glass-walled booth above the main corridor that you have to walk through to go anywhere in this meeting. And if you come up there, we can show you the CD-ROM from this project. We are looking for some input over the next few weeks on this, and then we will press several thousand copies at the end of August and provide them at the ESOP meeting, EDTA, and to individuals who have indicated that they would like a copy. The intent is to distribute this very widely and to make it available to just about everybody. I'll just give you a brief sound taste of this. I'm sorry that I can't show this to you, but if we could turn the sound on.
I spent 2 years in Johannesburg referring to London, working for Royal Hospital, which is the 2000-bed hospital.
So this is Dr. T.K. Smith talking about the very start of her career. We have a fascinating film from 1930, one of the first sound films made, where John Jacob Abel is talking about his discovery of hemodialysis and its use in treating patients. He's such a good speaker. He was better in 1930 than any of us are in 1997. This is probably the crucial piece of it. The first suggestion of use of hemodialysis to save patients.
Which can retain all this toxic state. I say it occurred to me that if in some way we could remove these toxic substances from the blood of these patients, they might be improved, at least for the.
So that's a little taste of that. We also have Klaus Brunn talking about the very first renal biopsy, showing you in pictures the way he did that biopsy. Plus Heppenstall, Merrill, Scribner, Paul Oshima, Byways. And it's a very interesting group of people. So even though I'm going to spend all the rest of the time now talking about the internet, I want you to realize that in that cyberspace booth, we have lots of other things to show you. We can help you very much become comfortable with using the internet and the World Wide Web and the resources on it. But there's also a great deal more to see up there, including the up-to-date program you'll be hearing about later. So now, the internet. I think all of you are aware of these general trends, extremely general trends, but you know, even if you're not quite sure what it is, that there is in our society worldwide more and more talk about this entity, the internet. And you may be aware of other trends, you may probably dispute these, but you would not dispute that more and more what you read and hear in all aspects of human communication involves the use of this new resource, new medium of the internet. And this is a substantial phenomenon in terms of the way people are spending their time worldwide. People are turning off their TV sets, logging onto the internet. There are ways now that you can watch TV on your computer. There are ways that you can use the TV set as a computer monitor. So we're also getting a merger of these two technologies, but people are indeed, for recreation, for their work, for all the various things they're doing in life, making very heavy use of this new technology of the internet. In the latter part of my presentation, I'll talk specifically about renal resources there. But I think those of you who are not using this yet, that's really not surprising. It's only existed in its present state for less than 3 years. It was really in the fall of '94, the World Wide Web took off, that the log phase growth of this enterprise began. So we're very early in its development. On the other hand, it is spreading so rapidly that certainly by the end of this millennium, by the next International Congress, let us say in '99, you are really going to have to be familiar with this and using this to stay current. You can see here, it's not important the actual numbers, but this had a very slow start. In 1985, there were only about 2,000 computers worldwide hooked up to the internet, a very small number. Now there are millions, and this increase occurred largely within 1994. And this shows then what happened until the 90s. There was virtually no growth in the use of the internet. It then took off slowly, and then at the end of '94 began in a sort of log phase that continues today, so much so that you would ask how many people are connected to the internet. It's just impossible to figure that out. It's a bit like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. While you're trying to measure something, it's already changing. How did this come about? Well, with a lot of things, it's not important for you to know the origins. But here, I think the origins are very important because the origins directly relate to the robustness of this new medium. The internet was formed as a reaction to the former Soviet Union launching Sputnik in 1957. So it was a very embarrassing event for the US, and they reacted to it by forming something called ARPA. And eventually, ARPA came to create a communication network for the US military that would be able to survive nuclear attack. You could wipe out most of the network, and the people would still be able to interact with each other. And this was, for a long time, the basic reason for creating the internet. And the basic characteristic it had to have is that it could survive a nuclear attack. So many of you will hear that the internet is overhyped. It's not going to be there for very long. It's going to crash. It's something superficial, unimportant. But the important thing to remember is how it began. And the consequence of that is that it's not going to be just an overhyped bubble about to burst, because of the fact that catastrophic failure is unlikely in something that was built specifically to withstand nuclear war, which is the case here. So then the further development, the National Science Foundation became involved in this. The number of hosts, the number of computers connected greatly increased. The speed of the lines between them, they became very fast. And the World Wide Web came into being in 1992, but it saw very little use until '94. And so where we are today is that we all have quite easy access to the internet. Now, you may say, well, I know that's not so. Actually, the barrier now is often a barrier that precedes internet access. In some countries of the world, it may take you 10 years to get your own phone line. And then when you have it, it creates a risk because other people may charge calls to it, and it's a financial drain. It may be enormously expensive. And of course, without a phone line, you cannot connect often. But the barriers once you have a phone to getting connected to the internet as long as you have the financial resources to get the phone and the phone connection in the first place, are almost not there anymore. So there are barriers to having your own personal phone and to being able to afford to call wherever you have to call to get hooked up. But beyond that, there are today virtually no barriers for anyone being connected to the internet. Is it a learning process that you can't afford the time for? No. It is. I knew virtually nothing about this in 1993. My wife was a person in our family who knew about these sorts of things. She bought us a Macintosh computer. And so everything that I've learned, I basically learned since 1993. And so you could do it too. Just to go back to this. Now, this is a tremendously powerful resource. It's a powerful force in our society. Internet resources can greatly enhance professional productivity and global human interaction, speeding communications, image sharing, literature searches, and general information gathering by several orders of magnitude. That's true. But it can also be the greatest waste of time you've ever experienced in your entire life. And this is not just a joke, that careers are being lost because people find out about the internet, get fascinated by it, and spend their time engaging in activities just intriguing enough that they think they're accomplishing something when they're actually accomplishing absolutely nothing. And it's a great risk. I regard using a computer as being similar to taking a trip. Each of those has to have a focused reason for doing it. And I've come to believe, for instance, in the case of trips, that just because somebody at the other end wants to hear you speak is not a sufficient reason. It should be something else that you can accomplish, something that is testable, measurable. The same is true here, that you should identify what your objectives are for using computer, for using the internet, and have it something that you can test. And then you'll know it's like an experiment. It's like science thing. You can tell if you're being successful or not. And that's the way to approach this. Because it's powerful one way or the other. It can waste tremendous amounts of your time and lead you to a much less productive life than you would otherwise have. And it can also do exactly the opposite. It can be a great force for good. So the challenge for each individual is to personally harness the unique and expanding capabilities of the internet to enhance productivity and quality of life. Now, many of you may feel that the presentation thus far has been extremely one-sided, that you know there are problems with the internet, and I just haven't been talking about it. I've been presenting this as something everybody has access to and not bringing up any of the problems. Well, the fact is that many of the problems will solve themselves without you doing anything. It's true now that many internet connections right now, if you're using a modem, are slow in a lot of ways. You have to wait for these wonderful multimedia images and sound to download, to come to you, to be realized in your own computer and your own hard drive. But if you do absolutely nothing, one day your local TV cable supplier will knock on your door and say, do we have a deal for you? Through your TV cable, you will now be able to access the internet all the time. It will be 1,000 times faster than it previously was, and it will cost you about $40 US per month. That's occurring worldwide. There are tremendous financial inequities here. In the U.S. now, a T1 line is about $12,000 to $15,000 a year. This is one of the fastest ways to be hooked up to the internet. If you have your own T1 line that nobody else is using, that's what it costs. In Europe, it's about 10 times that. It's about $100,000 a year for no particular reason. The costs are not higher there. Just this is an area where, like the phone access, monopolistic activity can come to be the primary determinant of what the cost is. And so this also, there will be a relatively inexpensive way for you to hook up to the internet, no matter where you live, as long as you have access to your own phone line. But there also may be ways to hook up that are enormously expensive and that you could not possibly afford. But there are lots of other solutions, not only cable modems, direct backbone connections, mirror sites, so you're always connecting to a site close to you, which would be faster. Having an express line, where if you only want to go in for a short time, you always have quick and easy access. There are many other solutions. So this is not going to be a permanent problem. The longer you wait before you start using the internet, the less of a problem this will be. And what about just being overwhelmed? The amount of data there is too great. You can't possibly cope with all this stuff. It's been likened to drinking from a fire hose. What about that? Does that have a solution? That also has many solutions. First of all, there's filtering. You can, for instance, in your email software, if you know the source of the junk mail, the uninteresting mail that you're receiving, you can set up your email software so all of that goes entirely to the trash. You never see it. It never bothers you again. And you can filter the rest of your mail into individual mailboxes by categories and look at them later. So you can have a highly organized system for receiving mail that is a very robust way to keep your life overall in a very organized state. And it does not have to overwhelm you. Now that's talking about email message. What about other things? Well, for instance, new websites and other resources on the internet. The internet's there all the time, 24 hours a day. You have to sleep sometimes. You can have a search robot that during the night is out there searching for new things of interest to you. And when you come to your computer the first thing in the morning, it can then present to you the things that it's found through its searching during the night when you were asleep. There are also digests, so that rather than getting multiple individual messages, you get all of the messages, say, from the previous day in one single message. And that then represents one other solution to this problem of being overwhelmed with too much data. Now, if Shakespeare were alive today, his plays, much of the rest of his writing, would be written very differently. There is an odd phenomenon that the importance of computers in our societies worldwide, has brought about in almost every country. If your parents felt you were destined for great things, you were going to university, you were going to have a good job, you were going to become a physician, then by definition, you would not learn how to type, because learning how to type is something for people who were going to have ordinary existences later on. So now we face the paradoxical situation where the people who have the most need to use the internet, where the richness of what's there is greatest for them, being the people with the least developed typing skills. And because of that, people have tried to come up with shorthand ways where you just type a few keys and you express a complex thought. Now, these are just a very small number of these. We call them emoticons, acronyms, whatever you want to say, but they're a way to use a very short series of keyboard characters to express a more complex thought. And you can understand the motivation for this, which is that many people using the internet now have very poor keyboarding skills. Does that mean that it's not worth you looking at it because everything's misspelled and so on? No. There are excellent spell checking programs that are quite easy to use. even if you're a very poor typist. Many of you are associated with universities, and the standard now is that the university provides you with free access to the internet. The computer in your office would be directly hooked up to the university server internet backbone, and so it would be very fast. And at home, you would then be able to make a free phone call and connect to the university system. You usually stay on for 2 hours. So this has become standard worldwide, and I think there's a strong argument if your particular university does not provide that, the precedent is so great for having this provided that the strength of your argument that you should have it is very, very strong. And there are also free nets that in individual cities, people set up ways to access the internet for free. And then there are many ways to pay for access. And the advantage of paying for access through, for instance, using CompuServe America Online or one of these other services is if you have a laptop computer and a portable modem, you can then connect practically in any major city in the world. So you're connected, you're hooked up all the time, no matter where you go. And that makes this then a very powerful way for you to stay in contact. You may never have to pay for a phone call home again, where you can use the free access through the internet, relatively free. So now I'm going to talk more about resources for nephrology, renal medicine. This is quite recent. It really began in October of '94. This is when we began the Nephrol discussion group and the ISN worldwide webpage and the Renal Hepatic Society worldwide webpage. The next resource to be created was the RenalNet website in January of '95. The first renal biopsy images were sent over the internet in March of '95. The excellent online renal journal, HDCN, Hypertension, Dialysis, and Clinical Nephrology, began in September '95, and there have been many other resources created since then. In terms of the accesses to the ISN worldwide webpage, these are almost all physician accesses. We get about 700 accesses per month. Most of them come from the first world, but we have people from 70 countries who are accessing this page. We have relatively few accesses from developing countries, but there are some from virtually all developing countries. When you create a slide like this, of course, it's very quickly out of date. The Nephrol Internet Discussion Group now has 974 members. As of today, we will provide the 1,000th subscriber with a free trip to the ASN this coming November. Depending upon where they live, if they live close, we'll pay for hotel and airfare. If they live a great distance away, we'll pay for airfare alone. But that's going to be a very exciting moment for us when we have our 1,000th subscriber. This group averages 6 to 8 messages a day. If getting so much email traffic is a problem for you, there's also a digest version that is available, so you get all the postings from the previous day as a single message to the table of contents. Why would you want this? What's there for? Well, virtually no matter what area of renal medicine you're interested in, we have talked about that. We have had significant discussions in those areas. And we're specifically talking about questions, important questions, that you can't find the answers to anywhere else. So this is not redundant. It does not replace reading journals and books. It is something that is cutting edge, dealing with those things that have not appeared in journals and books yet. And some of the most interesting questions that we have to do with, for instance, renal bioethics, intellectual property. There are many other subjects beyond the main ones, which of course are clinical nephrology, hemodialysis, transplantation, renal pathology. Many of the messages relate to those things. Well, so we talk about a lot of things. Have we actually done anything? Have we accomplished it? Is it all just talk? All these areas represent areas in which we have changed things. Either those enterprises started with us or they were significantly changed by us. In the case of the ISN program, we had the person in charge of the ISN program for last year's meeting on there as one of our subscribers, and there were very significant suggestions made about how the ISN program should be structured, and there were changes made on the basis of our nephrol discussion. The Neoral versus Sandimmune cyclosporin preparation controversy reached a peak on the internet with us. Many people who don't have a clue what the internet is and have never used a computer were nevertheless dealing with the messages from our group as this controversy went on. And all the other things listed here are instances where we really accomplished something. In terms of the mass poisoning in Haiti, we found out about that through this group. We got corporate support for the response sent through this group, and it played a key role in the entire response to that mass poisoning event. There have been clinical trials started by this group. There have been a number of significant things that happened with it. But what it's best at must be something familiar to all of you. You have a challenging case, a challenging patient. What do you do now? You think of a way to prepare a presentation on that patient. You take it to a local rounds. At that rounds, you have some people in training who you are in the position of teaching, and other people who know as much or more than you, who can then provide some feedback on the case. And so for an individual case presented at a local rounds, you may get significant important inputs and suggestions from 3 or 4 or 5 other people locally. Think of the power of a resource that would allow you to contact 1,000 people rather than 3 or 4 or 5, and to get significant feedback from the few people out there who are the real experts who've really had a patient like this, who really know something about this very challenging problem you're having locally. This is probably the greatest power that this resource has. And of course, it has to be used wisely. If you have a case that you can't figure out, but 95% of renal physicians elsewhere would be able to figure out, that's not the case to send to us. Now, is this the only resource of its type? No, we strongly feel that there should be 2 other resources like it. There should be an internet discussion group that answers sort of simple questions, the basic questions for people who don't have local access to journals and books. That's quite important, but it should be separate from this. And there also should be a cyberNephrology journal club. If you think of this, the plight of authors, an author publishes an article, it comes out, he sees it, he takes it home and shows it to his wife and kids. But does he ever know what anyone else thinks about it? Well, he may know at the next national or international meeting, or someone may write to him, but these are chance events. Imagine the power of a resource where as soon as the article comes out and people have widespread access to it, you then start talking about it with the author taking part in that, and suddenly people writing in the medical literature have a quality of feedback that's never been available before. It's wonderfully stimulating for authors. It's a way to improve the quality of future articles. And that's also something we will do. So we plan all three of those things. But at the moment, the nephrol group is the primary group through which we're doing all the other things that we're up to. Now, some of you may have the feeling that you're creative, and if you send the product of your creativity to the internet, that it's lost. That then everybody owns it. It's not yours anymore. As far as we can tell, the laws in every country are that that's not the case. If you wrote it, you own it. You can send it to the internet, but if somebody wants to publish it, if they want to use it in some other way, they have to ask you. It's still yours. You don't lose ownership by sending it to the internet. So, how to subscribe to the nephrol group? It's really quite simple, as shown here. It can be even simpler. You can simply tell me that you want to do that if this is too tough for you, and all I would need is to know your email address. And if you don't have an address and want to know how to hook up, we can also help you with that. So you can come up to the cyberspace booth and see what we have there. There's lots of one-on-one training that we can provide you there. And we hope there will be very heavy traffic. We have 10 individual stations, and if you get bored with what's happening on our side of the room, there's Solez's side of the room. So I think you would find it a very exciting place to spend time in. And so 3 ways. You have an email address. If you don't know how to do this, just tell me or tell us what that address is, and we can subscribe you, or you can do what it says here, or we can help you to get on to the internet. Now, for a long time, our activities in this area were unfunded. They had no particular basis in terms of any funding from a major agency. This year, in 1997, that has changed in a very dramatic way, because the National Kidney Foundation in the United States has decided that it's their wish to be a player on the international stage. And they wanted to know how to gain profile, how to do that. And they came up with the idea that the way to do that is to be the primary renal organization supporting renal resources on the internet. And since we were already doing many things there, they decided, rather than creating something new, to simply support what we're already doing and enlarge greatly the mandate that we had already taken on by simply giving us more funding and more things to do. So it's a very exciting time for us. And this is something very new. This NKF cyberNephrology initiative was launched at their spring meeting this past April, April of '97. At those dates, mid-April, the contract for this, which is a contract between my institution, the University of Alberta, and the NKF in the US, has just been signed in the past few days. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to do a lot of the things I've already talked about. This will help support the Nephrol Internet Discussion Group, Cyber Nephrology Online Journal Club, a worldwide internet renal telepathology network, so people will be able to share renal biopsy images. We will maintain the NKF site on the World Wide Web. This is a tremendous mandate. I'm not sure we can do all these things, but anyway, we will coordinate the creation and dissemination of basically all of the electronic educational media that the NKF produces. This includes CD-ROM and also internet technology. And these will be targeted worldwide. This is not US specific. They sent a signal by putting so much funding outside of the US that they truly intend that this would be a worldwide initiative. And we'll continue to do the things that we're already doing, have been doing, which is maintaining the ISN webpage, the Renal Path Society webpage, our own departmental webpage, and it's anticipated there'll be substantial additional joint initiatives with these entities. We'll have guidance, but it's interesting, it's philosophical guidance. There'll not be any micro managing of what we do. We'll have a great deal of freedom, for instance, in how we spend our budget and exactly what we do, but there will be a super committee chaired by the ISN president, Bob Schreier, that will give us philosophical guidance, try to indicate to us where the field is going in the next 15 years, to guide us in what new aspects of the internet and CD-ROM technology we'll be looking at, what will replace the CD-ROM, what's the next kind of medium, how will people be storing things in the future, how will our society change, how will this impact on renal medicine. If you think about it, most of the people who know the answers to those questions are not renal physicians. And so I believe there'll be only 2 renal physicians on this super committee. The rest of them will be people from the basically communications industry, the internet industry, the computing industry. And some of the key figures there, so that this group will probably only physically meet one time, and then they'll keep on interacting after that, provide us with philosophical guidance. Now, at this meeting, we also created a new ISN commission, which is the ISN's group that is spearheading things in this area, CD-ROM technology, internet technology, and other similar things. This was just approved yesterday afternoon. Now, what is our intent? Are we trying to centralize things? Are we trying to reduce the number of websites out there and have everything come to the University of Alberta and reduce the sort of diversity, the heterogeneity? We are not trying to do that. We're trying to make it easier for people to access these things. We're trying to make it easier for people to create new web pages, to make those pages more useful. We are not trying to simply centralize or arbitrarily control something. Many of you know that West Edmonton Mall, where I live, is the largest shopping center in the world in terms of the number of stores and services. It is very centralized. You can do everything that you'd ever want to do there. You can born there, you can die there. All life's functions can go on within that mall. That's not really what we plan for the cyber-nephrology center. So I'll leave you once again with this slide. This does not cost anything. I would hope that many of you will, as a consequence of your experience at this meeting, make greater use of the internet, join the nephrology group if you're not already a part of it, and in general, take part in this very rich online life that renal medicine more and more has on a day-to-day basis. Okay, well, that's all I had to say. I would be happy to answer some questions, and then we'll go on to Dr. Agus. There must be questions. The danger if you don't ask questions is that I'll think about other things to say. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Being from Virginia, we often use the RenalNet. Do you actually interact with the RenalNet pretty much from where you are? The RenalNet is from Danville, Virginia.
No, I'm quite familiar with it. It was on one of my slides.
Yeah.
RenalNet site, it was one of the first websites out there after ours. It contains many things. It's heavily accessed by the families of patients, by whole class of people. Really, we have concentrated more on renal physician-specific resources. But it depends on what your focus is. I think if your focus is on things, academic, scholarly, moving the field ahead, and so on, then some of the sites we have created would be of interest to you. If your interests are much more practical than that, or if you're a patient or a friend of a patient or the family of a patient, then I think the things offered by RenalNet are very useful. If you ask me, this is just at this point in time, but some of the best sites are certainly outside of Canada and the US. In Italy, their national society has created one of the most robust web pages that I've ever seen. If you really want the best list of journals and other websites and so on, they have really fine-tuned this. And I've been to their annual meeting. It's been very locally effective. It's brought huge numbers of people in to use this technology. So this is not something that's focused on Canada and the US. It's something that can be done quite effectively worldwide. Many of the best resources do not come from Canada or the US. And you can create something that's quite wonderful wherever you are, and that will greatly enhance the practice of renal medicine there. Or other? Yes.
Being familiar with this, sir, maybe you could update me, even if I don't attend the international congresses anymore.
Yes. Right. I guess there is that aspect of it. Will this virtual attendance at the meetings reach a point where you really won't have to go to meetings anymore? I think that the value of meetings, you may not have realized this, but for most of us, the value of meetings is the human contact. That even if you could get the same intellectual content from the talks, the chance to actually be in the same room with some of these people is a very valuable thing in all sorts of ways. And that you can never replace. If you think about human communication, people who study this tell us, and this may seem remarkable to you at first, but if you think about it, you know it's so. Only 35% of human communication is the actual words. The rest has to do with voice inflection, body language, eye contact, all the sorts of things that you and I are doing now that are something separate from the words that I'm speaking. And over the internet, most times you just get words. So the communication is not entirely there. It's 35% there, but it's not like being in the same room. So just as the internet will never replace the sheet of paper or the book as a way of human interaction, communication, will change it, but it won't replace it. It also is not going to totally replace meetings. But for people who cannot come to the International Congress, we're going to come closer and closer to being able to provide an experience similar to actually being there. We're already quite close. Yes, in that.
John A. Victoria. One of the things that worries me a little bit is the fact that a journal which has peer review tends to maintain a central direction. How do you intend to prevent this from veering too far out into, use an Americanism, a left field approach. And the second thing I think that would worry me is if I put a case on the internet to sift through 1,000 answers to find those that are not from left field and are steering me centrally.
Well, of course, if you received 1,000 answers, then that would wreck your entire professional life. And so that never happens. We have 1,000 subscribers. Most people just lurk. They just read. They hardly ever write. And so each day we have maybe 1,000 people reading and 6 people writing. And the case that you post, the people who send back the messages would be those very few people who really have something significant to say, who feel they are uniquely able to answer this. And there would be very few of them. The average case gets maybe 5 or 6 replies at the very most. Some get only 1 or 2. Now, you're right about something else, and this has to do with the concept of preprints. In the field of physics, for some years now, normal journals have largely died. Nobody's interested in normal journals because every article, as soon as it's accepted by a journal, it goes on the internet as a preprint. You can get the whole thing with the graphics and everything within a day after the journal accepts it. When the physical hard copy journal comes out months later, nobody's interested. Now, I think medicine and physics are somewhat different in that there's greater risk in medicine if we had that system completely. People could falsify, they could make it appear that their article had been peer reviewed and accepted when it hadn't. And they could try to promote therapies which are actually harmful. And so I think that is the reason that our field has not yet gone over to this idea of having everything out there as a preprint. But it will be quite interesting to watch this phenomenon in physics and to consider over time whether we could go in that way. No, I think we have to maintain the standards of all current journals, and simply putting a manifestation of those same journals on this very robust new medium does not really create any risk. It's simply providing the same quality to more people. Yes, maybe one more question and then we must go on to Dr. Agus's. Yes.
What I want to know is that if I send my slides, pathology slides, or say X-rays on the scanner to you, and then you report it back, will it have any commercial value? Do we have to pay for that? Because otherwise, what would be happening is that since you're an expert in pathology, I will send you all the pathology slides.
I think there is a variable answer to that. It depends upon where you're from and what your resources are. We have a way, if you're able to pay for us to look at things, that we will look at them and send you a bill. And we also have a way that if you aren't able to, that we will do it for free. And we're quite happy to do that. And as you understand, the people who pay subsidize the people who don't. And this is the way life works in general. So that if you are not able to pay for that service, and I think many in this room wouldn't be able to, but the people who can are doing something quite good by paying because they're helping us to be able to provide this service to you. Will it reach a point where we can't handle that? It may, but it has not yet. I would encourage you, any of you who want to do that, we would certainly welcome either paying or non-paying, depending upon what's appropriate for your personal circumstance.
Okay, I guess that's it. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed this.